Welcome to the Master Your Millions podcast, the show all about your financial potential and leaving a legacy for future generations. Here are your hosts, Jason and Scott Henderson.
I'm your host, Scott Henderson, and my co-host is Dr. J. We have a very special guest coming on. Jason, who do we have?
Well, Scott, today we have a fellow Cache Valleyite, someone who was born here in Cache Valley and has spent a big portion of his life in the valley. However, he's been very successful as an entrepreneur and as a dad and in many different areas of life. And that's why he is on our podcast today, because everybody knows that the Master Your Millions podcast is all about accumulating, enjoying, and passing on wealth. And so today we have Judd Eades. He spent, I guess, a big portion of his professional career in writing other people's disasters. I'm not sure whether that's the right way to say it. Or when you would have a flood or a fire, something go wrong, and you're in a panic, you would call Judd and his company. Welcome to the podcast, Judd.
Great. Thanks. Great to be here. And we sucked crap out of people's houses for a couple decades. That was part of my career. So in that part of being an entrepreneur is a little niche, is find something no one else wants to do. So that was easy. Like nobody wants to do that. So, there we go. That was it. That was the easy way to start a business.
So you didn't actually start the business. You purchased it. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah, I bought ARS, the disaster cleanup company that had an office in Logan at the time in 2006. And then over the course of time, we grew it to eight other offices. And I just recently sold that about a year and a half ago.
So the starting revenue when you took over was roughly?
It was, I think the average was $1.5 million, somewhere in there.
And you grew it to?
When we were done, it was, it would fluctuate just under 20 million.
Amazing. Good job. So tell us, if you would, you already kind of one hint there, a hint about being an entrepreneur is find something that no one else wants to do and do that. What would you say the top 3 or 4 things that you would give advice to someone who wants to be an entrepreneur?
People ask me, frequently about it. A part of me is like, a part of me feels a little bit lucky, but at the same time, I look back to where it was just kind of my DNA. And I don't know if I'm right or wrong. You're interviewing a lot more people who would know, but I just feel like some people have it in them, and some people don't. My background prior to disaster cleanup was extreme sports. All of my companies all the parent companies, even my disaster cleanup company, the one that only the accountants knew and the government, was Adrenalin Industries. So all of my companies are called Adrenalin something. And so I just grew up taking risks. I ski raced, mountain bike raced, as a professional climber for years, climbed mountains around the world. And so those, to me, those are real risks. In business, it's like, and when you're young, it didn't bother me to take the risk because I didn't have it much to lose, when you're 20 and, even into your 30s. I just didn't, it's like, what do you have to lose? I knew I could get a job making what the average person would make, just with my ambition and stuff. I felt I could do that. So I wasn't worried to swing for the fence, but that's not the advice I'd give just anybody, because there's a lot of people that might not have the stomach for it. And it wouldn't, I don't think it would emotionally affect me if it failed, where others it might lead to some mental health problems or something, or, perhaps marriage problems, whatever. That was a key part too, is my wife was willing to go for that ride and let me swing for the fence. And she didn't seem, too stressed about it, where others, they might have that entrepreneurial spirit, but if their spouse doesn't have it, it could affect their marriage. And then it's not worth it. I think a good marriage is a lot more important than having extra wealth.
So, I want to go back for a second. You bought this company. Was it on a whim? Was it brought to you and your dad's like, this is a good company? Like, how did you know you weren't being taken advantage of? Talk about that first step for us for a second, a little bit more in detail.
So I went to Twin Falls, Idaho, and worked for my best friend called Summit Restoration. Prior, I'd sold my outdoor companies. I had a little bit of money, and he asked me to look at a dry cleaners, because in disaster cleanup and house fire, you will have sometimes you'll have 50 grand worth of dry cleaning, that you're subbing out. And so it made sense to him to maybe buy a dry cleaners with all the dry cleaning. So we went up and said, hey, you have a little more business experience. Will you look at if this thing pencils out? He goes, I know we can bring all this extra income to it, but can it be profitable before, and then how much more profitable with what we're bringing? So in that, I knew nothing about. I didn't even know which end of the hammer to swing, in construction. But I understood basic business principles. So we went up, and he just said, hey, do you want to stick around and help me grow the disaster cleanup? And I was fascinated with it because it seems so recession resistant, almost recession proof, because if you have a mortgage, you have to have insurance. And if you have a disaster, most people don't have the skills to know what to do to take care of that, a flood or a fire. And so I was intrigued, and it just felt right. It's about your gut, spiritual experience, whatever you want to call it. It just felt like the right thing to do. So for 3 years I did that, and it just it wasn't growing what I wanted to do. It wasn't, and partnerships, in my opinion, only work if 1 and 1 equals more than 2. And so, like, all these people want to form partnerships because they're scared. It's like, oh, if I share the scariness, then it's okay. So I see all these people, they're just ridiculous to me. It's like, both of you, the other person doesn't bring something extra special to the table. So partnerships only work if the partners, you both have special talents that are so different from each other that together you're much more powerful than on your own. And so I just wanted to get out on my own, and I was going to open I was going to open a new business, a restoration company up in Rexburg, Idaho, because there wasn't one there. And then through that process, just kind of luck, I had an uncle who was looking at a totally different business in northern Utah, and the broker had a book of businesses for sale, and one was a disaster cleanup business. And so he called me and said, hey, do you guys want to grow your business up in Idaho? There's a place for sale. And I said, actually, I'm looking to go out on my own. So I came down and looked at ARS, and very unique. Myself and the Clarks, it was Jerry and his son Dusty. To this day, they're still 2 of my closest friends. I just love those guys. There was just a trust, like it was instant connect. It was, I feel very blessed to have met them, and for them to trust me. And I didn't have a lot of money, but I had some money to put down, and they financed the rest, which is, not very safe on their end. But it is, I would probably never recommend anyone do this, but we shared the same accountant and the same attorney to do that transaction. That's how much trust we had in each other. So different than these big venture capital deals. I mean, the due diligence I did when I just sold the company a year and a half ago was insane. There's countless attorneys and an entire finance team. They're scrubbing everything, and everyone's thinking, oh, who's being dishonest? I mean, they're just looking for, somebody's hiding something. And it was the exact opposite, when I bought ARS. And so, yeah, I don't know if I'd recommend that to anybody. That's pretty rare, but I feel pretty fortunate to be involved in a process like that.
Would you have done it differently if you had to go back now?
No.
I mean, it worked out for you, but if you went in blind now to a completely different business, would you still be as trusting as you were before?
No, it was yeah, because it's just what my gut told me. I trust everyone until they give me a reason not to. And I just trusted them from the start. There's just something they're just great men. And so much so that a few years later they wanted back in the industry. And so I helped them source a good opportunity in Casper, where called a lot of executives, insurance companies, said, where in the United States is there a need for a disaster cleanup? And it was, and Casper, Wyoming was one. So when I sold, we separated because they didn't want to sell yet. So, but yeah, they were a licensee or franchise for probably 15 years. So I still got to work with them, in that sense. So yeah, it was, it was unheard of. It's totally against anything you're ever going to be taught or trained in business. But it worked. And I don't know if that's the truth. I mean, we're in northern Utah. I still like the good old boy thing where your handshake and your word means something. And in that case, it did. Unfortunately, that's not the case. Probably more frequently than not outside of, these kind of very conservative areas that I live in. But yeah, our word meant something and we kept it.
So at the beginning of all this, Jason kind of led on, and you've mentioned it a couple of times, and even mentioned one of the principles that you're kind of a risk taker. But what are these basic principles that you've referred to?
Ask me that again. What do you mean by the basic principles?
Well, just a second ago, you said that there's some basic principles that you kind of adhere to when it comes to business.
Yes. And the most important thing, it's kind of become our family motto because I've said it so much that to my kids, as I told them, I said, if you want to be successful, make everyone you meet feel important. And some people might run with that financially. If that's their motive to treat people well because it will make them rich, it's not going to work for them. But I've just told my kids from the time they could, understand what that meant, is that from all sorts of different things, just from having friends to being a leader in a business to being helpful in different nonprofits, your church, whatever it might be, your life will be so blessed if you serve others and you make them feel important and genuine. If you fake it, people see through it. I've been around business people where it's like they just read some Stephen Covey book and they're like forcing their personality, which I guess is better than just being a jerk. But you can tell it's like they've read something and they're forcing themselves to be something that's not natural to them. And so with my kids, I've tried to make it very natural. Like you make everyone feel important. And there's been some big wins. When my daughter was in elementary school, I mean, she's 19 now, but when she was in elementary school, she came home, she was so proud to tell me, she's like, Dad, today I picked the smelly kid to be on my team. And she knew that like every time there was one of those things where it's like, hey, pick your team. This one kid who must not have had very good hygiene, he always got picked last. And so she's a captain, she's a great leader, and she got asked to pick a team. And so the first person she picked was the smelly kid that everyone picked last. And it was like, what, your kids are, it's like sometimes you wonder, your kids listening to you. And it was kind of a win for me. I'm like, you know what? She gets it. My daughter gets it. It was a proud dad moment.
That's awesome. Are there any other principles that you would say besides just being genuine and being yourself around others?
Yeah, I think principles that have helped me in business is be likable, keep your word, and be very passionate about you hear people talk about your attitude and stuff like that. Well, as a leader in a business, as an entrepreneur, and you're trying to motivate hundreds of employees, if you're not passionate about what you're doing, your business is going to stop growing, and all your employees will feel it too. So passion is huge. I mean, we're doing disaster cleanup. That's not like a sexy business or something that people are excited. Oh, wow, that's amazing. But the team we created is like, hey, we don't have this like super, amazing job, like as far as the operations go. But we built a team that was incredible. And so our employees stayed. We didn't have a lot of turnover. I think it's because of the environment that we create. I know it is. It's the environment we created. And sometimes you'd hire an employee that might have had a great skill set or, had certain talents and we're good at that. But if they didn't mesh well with our team, then we let go of them quickly. I'd always say be slow to hire and quick to fire. I've used the analogy many times, like when I was, just turned 50. So I'm old enough that I grew up in a home that when I was a kid, we had a big wooden TV console, this massive TV in the family room with no remote control. And so it would take effort to get up and change the channel. So sometimes you would sit there and you'd be watching something on TV and you're like, it's okay, but it's not terrible. And so was it really worth the effort to get up and change the channel? And I see in business, more often than not, most business leaders, the channel's not bad enough. Like for me, I hated Star Trek or ice skating or something like that. It's like finally something got on, you get up and change the channel. Well, unfortunately in business, most people are waiting for an employee to be so bad as Star Trek, and this is my opinion, but I hated Star Trek. But it's like they're waiting for something so major to come along to get rid of somebody. Well, you're not doing them any favors, because if you don't like what they're doing, they're miserable. They're not passionate. If they were passionate, they would be doing better. And so if they don't have that passion, get up off your butt, change the channel, because there's probably something better out there. There's probably something better on that TV. There's definitely a better employee for you. And so many businesses just don't do that. They just are okay with mediocrity. And they also, your business is only as good as your worst employee. So I'll use disaster cleanup. If I send out a technician after hours, every Christmas somebody burns down their house. So we're on call. That's the miserable part of the business, is we'll send an employee out. If I send my worst employee out, that's who that customer now perceives our entire business as, is that employee, because that's who they met, that's who they interacted with. And so you're only as good as your worst employee. We need to be better at changing the channel for their sake and for the business's sake.
I'm laughing because Jason's favorite TV show is Star Trek. So you just hit a heartstring there.
So the podcast just got canceled. This will never make it.
It was rough. I can see him squirming. I love that. I think that's there's some great wisdom in that. And since let's go the other side of all of this now. You've sold the business, you've got all this capital. How have you used those principles to invest? Or have you had to learn a completely different set of rules?
A little bit. So I feel very blessed where I'm in a position now where I can work because I really want to, not because there's bills I've got to pay or a bunch of employees that you got to make payroll for. And so, and I took a little bit of a risk. I took out enough money to survive for 5 or more years without having to work, and then I left the rest in stock because there's a massive multiple that this private equity company's been turning every 3 years, and so I took a significant risk to leave most of that money in there. So I hope that pans out. I mean, I've trust that it will. It's disaster cleanup, where usually it's a pretty healthy business. And so, but with the rest, I started, over the years, I've always collected off-road vehicles. I've had a team that's built them. We used them for promotional vehicles for different businesses I've had. And so I decided I want to provide an opportunity for some of my key people that have been engineers and doing these things. So created this company called Adrenalin Industries. And right now we're building, very extreme off-road motorhomes called expedition trucks. And so these trucks sell for anywhere from $500,000 to over $1 million. And it's a terrible investment for our clients. Most of them have high net worth, but the real investment there is your time, time with your family. Kind of like boating. If you've ever owned a boat, it's the worst financial investment in the whole world. But to have your entire family in one small area cheering each other on as different people are doing things behind the boat, it's a priceless investment for time with my family. So I see so many financial people that get so caught up in the number that they don't create a healthy family environment. They don't balance that out well. And so there's sometimes I've got to look at what's the financial, like if I'm looking at true numbers, it might not make sense, but I feel lucky enough to have the extra money to where I can also buy some things that increase the impact that our family has together. And so these expedition trucks we're building are primarily that. You get these, couples that are, have some extra money. They want to travel the world. They buy our trucks and they go see the world and experience the culture that comes with that. Get away from the, standard stresses that a lot of the world provides or creates. And so, yeah, these trucks have been amazing, and it's so fun to build something that people are just losing their mind over, and the customers are so excited, to finally own something that's custom built for them. So that's kind of my semi-retirement deal right now, as I've, still too young to be fully retired. And I'd get too bored. So this has been a great distraction, if it's called that. It's been really fun, and at the same time, it's profitable and it's successful. So it's been terrific.
You've done quite a bit with real estate, though, I as well, I understand, right?
Yes, I've had part of it, and that's when you're asking about different business advice. That's one thing, is I see so many business owners, not even business owners, just people with some extra income. They go buy another truck, or go buy a sports car, or they go buy a bunch of four-wheelers or something like that. And my advice to them always is, go buy your first investment property. Go buy a rental home. Even if you just have a management company manage it, then it's just mailbox money. You don't have to put a lot of time into it. And historically, I've seen real estate double about every 10 years. So if you bought a home for 100 grand, in 10 years, it's probably be worth 200. And sometimes it might not. Sometimes it might not be worth any more. But then in 20 years, it will. It will catch up. And so, yeah, I've got really lucky. Some of my commercial properties were buildings I bought for our disaster cleanup locations. And some of those are worth 10 times more than I paid for them 10 to 15 years ago. So they didn't just double, like they're 10 times worth more. Like, it's just crazy. And at the time, I didn't understand the wisdom in that. I was buying it because I didn't want to pay rent. I understood I didn't want to pay rent. I'd rather own it and build the equity in it. I don't think I really understood how much the value will increase in properties like that. And so yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No problem.
Here's an age-old question that Jason and I often discuss. At what point, or in your personal life, at what point do you take that money and buy that new car versus doing the investment property? Because something that we really struggle with is, every penny that I've got, I want to plow back into the business, or into another real estate property, or oil, or whatever it is that we're investing in. And I know one of our weaknesses is we have a hard time. Yeah, like, we want to build that house. Like, I've got a lot that I'm debating whether to build now or wait another couple of years and build later. So how do you tackle that problem?
To me, I think it depends on how much money you have, or how much you're generating. Because so I think everyone should be, when they start to have some extra money, go buy at least one investment property. And this is my opinion. You guys get opinions from everybody. Because, like I said, so my first one was a home that my first investment property that I bought was 15 to 17 years ago. And it was one of those homes in one of those 50 and older communities where they're attached by a garage. And anyway, that home is worth 4 times more now in that short amount of time. And I've rented it out. So, you're actually making a couple hundred. When it was financed, I was making a couple $100 a month, and it was paying down the loan. And at the same time, it's now 3 to 4 times more valuable. So I recommend that first. But yeah, there is a balance. And so my advice for others is to, don't be stupid, and don't go buy, if you're like, I want a boat. I for sure wouldn't go buy a brand new boat that's going to depreciate in half in 4 to 5 years. You go buy a $200,000 ski nautique or Malibu, and it's going to be worth $100 grand in 4 to 5 years. I wouldn't do that. I would go buy the $100,000 boat that's going to depreciate another 10 grand maybe in 4 to 5 years, and make sure your family enjoys and spends the time with it. So I recommend having fun. Life is short. So many people get so focused on making money that they don't take the time to spend with their family, and then their kids, there's a disconnect. My children are my best friends. Like, honestly, my boys, it's so cool. My boys will call me and say, "Hey Dad, you want to go ride dirt bikes this week?" Or, "Hey Dad, can we go to lunch today?" Whatever. Like, my kids are my best friends. And if I was so driven by money and that was my only focus, I would have I would have been a complete disconnect with my children instead of taking the time. And some of that time requires some resources. It requires spending some money and buying some things they enjoy and participating with things that they like. And, you don't have to go buy motorcycles and boats. There's other things, that you can do for a lot less money. You go camping or backpacking or things like that are a fraction of the cost. But some people it's hard. I see people so focused on money and work, and it's easy because if I put in, and I feel like I kind of fell into that trap in my 30s, where you put in this effort at work, and within a short amount of time, you see the reward, and that becomes addicting. It's like, oh my gosh, I just made 100 grand, in a month or something like that. And you're like, I used to dream about making 100 grand a year, and I just made that this quick, in my 30s. You're thinking that, and it becomes addicting because you get addicted to that instant success. Where if I go take my 5-year-old to the park and spend time with them, like it was a kind of annoying. Was it a hassle? Did they make a mess? Did they get ice cream all over them? And if you're looking at all the negatives of that, well, then all of a sudden that kid's 25, and there's not maybe you get together for Thanksgiving or whatever, but they're not your best friend, and that's what life's about. So people need to balance that better. I see so many people that are looking so quickly for that instant success, and you guys see it in wealth management. Is that you got to be patient. The big money comes from being patient, letting it compound and waiting for it. It's the same with your investment with your family and your wife and with your kids. Is some of that takes time to really see that big reward. And luckily, I kind of refocused in my 30s and kind of saw my life that my focus was more on work than more important things. And so I hired 4 vice presidents to do what I used to do on my own, and assigned them all. I'm like, oh, this is so risky. I'm going to take a huge pay cut. And you know what? I didn't even end up taking a pay cut because they were better at it, the 4 of them together, than I was on my own. And it freed up all my time, and I was able to start balancing life a lot better and spend it with my children.
That's amazing. Let's come back a little bit to the ARS. And, often when people had a disaster, they had insurance to back them up for the fact they didn't have the capital to recover from a disaster. And then I want to compare that to now what you're doing now with these exotic RVs. Is that what you said?
Yes.
That you're selling, these high net worth people, are they paying cash for them? Are they financing them? How's that working?
Every one of them have paid cash. Now, I don't know if they're doing a home equity loan on the side or something like that, but every one that we built, I think we built 11 in the last 2 years, and everyone so far has paid cash.
Okay, but you don't necessarily offer financing for them.
No.
It's not like they can come to you and say, "Hey, we'll finance it for you," because
No. Yeah.
GMAC makes more on the financing of cars than GM does in making the cars, right? But it's in the
Yes.
financing, right?
Yeah.
Even with your first rental property, you financed it, and the renters are making the mortgage payment, everything. Yet the bank is making a lot off of that transaction.
Yeah. The bank owns everything. You drive up and down your street in your neighborhood, you're like, none of these people own this. The bank owns their cars, their houses, for the most part. And we learned that too in disaster cleanup. You have deductibles. Sometimes they're $5,000 or $10,000, and the people that struggle the most to pay you have always been the people that appear to be the wealthiest. And
Why is that?
I think it's because they're income statement rich, not balance sheet rich. So they might be a doctor, they might be an attorney, it might be whatever. So they have income. They might make a few $100,000 a year, but they spend it all. So they have no balance sheet. Their house is leveraged, their cars are leveraged, everything they have is leveraged. So their income statement looks okay because they're bringing in money, but they have no assets. They have nothing with equity in it because the more they make, the more they keep spending. And so it's those people that all of a sudden it's like, hey, there's $5,000 or $10,000, and they might make $300,000 a year, but they're strapped so tight on because the bank owns everything that they think they own, that it's hard for them to come up with $5,000 to $10,000.
And so those are those that are in that situation, similar to the situation you were in your 30s. They're so focused on attempting to make more money to get ahead of their lifestyle that it's a never ending rat race. You see what I'm saying? I'm kind of drawing a comparison there, right? And that there's this, how do you ever get out of it? And it comes back to Scott's questions. Well, how do you know when to build the house or when to do this, right? And it plays into one of the things we talk often on this, and we asked you before you came on, is how much do you know about the infinite banking concept? How much do you know about the inner workings of banks to where you could put yourself in the situation to be financing your rental properties? You be the financing arm of something that generates money for you. What, did you ever think about when you were at ARS of helping those, high income earners that can't come up with 5,000 for their deductible because their basement flooded? They've got to have their basement repaired or it's going to stink, right? Did you ever consider financing it for them? Say, hey, we'll finance it for you for 18 months at 12% interest or something like. Did that ever cross your mind?
It did. And there were companies that reached out to us that wanted to benefit of that, because of how much money you can make on the financing. But at the same time, sometimes we get blinders on and we're like, oh, I didn't even think that, or it's too much effort. But I also see so many businesses that they get so diluted on trying to be everything to everybody. And so it never, when I thought about financing it, I'm like, is that really our skill set? Do we want to be the bank? There was the margins were really good in disaster cleanup. It takes a long time to get there because you can't just start a brand new restoration company and say, I want to do work for State Farm and Allstate. Like, there's so much qualifying. You have to be in business so many years. You've got to have so much equipment. You've got to have, not too much debt. They get access to all your financials and stuff. So the barrier of entry is pretty hard. And once you're there, it can be very lucrative. And so I see other like ARS was historically known when I bought it as a carpet cleaning company. And I think I drove my friends crazy that I bought it from because I just ignored carpet cleaning. Because you go clean carpets, you charge $100 to clean somebody's 3 bedrooms and you make $30. And, or you go to a flood and you make an 80% margin because you already own all the equipment. So there's no overhead in that, but your gross margin. And so it's like, where should my focus be? And yeah, you could go finance and do other things. And maybe I missed out on something, but at the time it was just like, I want to focus on growing this business, and that's where I put my effort in and the risk in.
And I'm not attempting to point out that you missed an opportunity and everything. It's that there is a principle though that we like to talk about of taking control of our individual finances and then set up a family banking system, right? I have a daughter that returned from Pennsylvania. She's spent 18 months in Pennsylvania and she's looking for a car right now. I have the ability, for the fact we have a family banking system, to finance that car for her at a much better interest rate that she can get from any bank in town or the dealership or any other company, right? We'll be able to finance that for her. So she'll get a better car for the same car payment that she thinks she can afford, right? Based upon her income. Yet the interest and the growth, if you will, the interest, which is profit, so to speak, on that money, the growth of it is going to go into the family system, not to Cash Valley Bank or whatever bank, right? It's just something that we like to teach people and say, look, as individuals and as people that want to be in control of everything in their life, that's one place that we sort of outsource all the time, is the financing of our lives. The banking function. We rely on banks to do things for us, to loan us money, to do this, to do that. And we never really take a step back and say, wait a second. Like you said, with your business, what am I really good at? Well, of course you have your things, but you can start to not outsource that, at least within the family, and build significant amount of wealth in a short period of time. I don't know. What would you say, Scott? Am I beating a dead horse or?
No, I think that's the silent arm that a lot of people underestimate. A lot of people get taken advantage of on the financing side of things versus making it work for them. Like it's a dual-edged sword. Yes, it can help you. Yes, it can give you leverage, although it depends on how you're looking at the problem. So,
And I'm familiar with the family, like you set up the family, LLCs or whatever to lease your cars back to you, so you can put your cars and stuff in there, lease it back to the family. And so I've heard of most people doing that as a little bit of a tax shelter.
There can be some tax things there, but there's a way though to have things work to your advantage, structures and things that not only for tax and for asset protection, but also for wealth accumulation. Were you going to say something, Scott? Sorry, I think I cut you off.
no, that was good. Go ahead.
Oh, good. Well, Judd, this has been a lot of fun. I mean, you're amazing at what you've done. I mean, I have known about you kind of through a mutual friend, and kind of heard about things. You can go back to ARS days. I had a brother in Pocatello, which is about 100 miles north of here. For those that are listening, that was an insurance adjuster, and his territory did come down into the Cache Valley and over into Star Valley, Wyoming, different places. He had a fairly big area. He represented a lot of different insurance companies. He was very good at what he did. And I know he referred most of his business to ARS. There was more than once that I was sent on a errand for him to come into ARS to either drop off some information, get some information or something. And you're dead right. You walk in there, everybody knew each other, everybody cared about each other, and it was a well-oiled machine. um, I know we met, but it was never like we became friends or anything, but I knew about what you guys were doing, and the big red truck out front, the whole era about that system was a reflection of you are. And so you've been very successful, and the cool thing is that you've already described here, which we love on this podcast, is you have been successful financially, and so you've accumulated the wealth, but you've also figured out how to enjoy the wealth, enjoy it in spending the time with the kids, having your kids be your best friends, going out and getting dirty on dirt bikes or whatever it is, that you're really living the way everybody wants to live. There's really, I mean, if someone wanted, oftentimes we say, hey, if someone wanted to get in touch with you, how would they do that? And I'm not sure that you're in that position that you'd want to do that. Do you have a website though for your exotic RVs?
Yes, if someone just in any search engine puts Adrenalin Industries in, or all of our social medias, Adrenalin Industries, our YouTube channels, Adrenalin Industries, they can find us there and contact me there as well. And that's cool. Your brother was an insurance adjuster. Those guys are very valuable and overworked. And I loved working with the insurance adjusters, and that's what they're there. They're there to be fair, to protect the homeowner and the insurance company. So that's cool. Your brother did that.
Any other questions, Scott?
No, I don't think so. Any final words, Judd?
No, thank you. I don't know if I'm the best guy to interview, but if any of your listeners want to know about having fun with their money, I'm really good at having fun with some of the extra money or whatever we've been blessed with. But life's incredible. I love life, everything about it. Love my family. Love all the people I got to work with, and I think that's what helped have a little bit of success, is that I truly was passionate about it. I love the people I get to work with, my coworkers, and I just enjoy life. It's feel very blessed. So thanks for spending time with me, and it was nice to meet you guys.
Thank you.
Yes,
Guys,
thanks. Real
if
quick,
you would
Scott,
like,
I'm certain, just for the fact of what I know about Judd and the company, that he just said that he loved all the people he worked with. And speaking for them, I'm sure they all love you as well, Judd, and they have been felt very blessed to have been able to work for you and with you. So, our congratulations. Real quick though, we usually ask someone, what's your next mountain? What's your next goal? Like a big goal out there that you want to do. and ask you what that is, and then also invite you back on the podcast when it does. But you've been a professional climber. Have you climbed Kilimanjaro? Have you climbed Everest? Is there some big goal that you still have out there that maybe you could put out there that you're going to go after and then come back and celebrate with us?
Just recently, yes, but yeah, I was able to climb a lot of mountains around the world. I couldn't. When I asked, it was funny. I met with both my father-in-law and mother-in-law to ask permission to marry their daughter, and I was a professional climber at the time. My mother-in-law, she had one condition: don't climb Everest. So I upheld that. I didn't climb Everest, which was difficult because when you're in your 20s and you have no money, and companies will pay you to go climb Everest. So instead, I climbed mountains that were a lot more dangerous and more people died on, but I just didn't tell her that. But one mountain I've never climbed is the Matterhorn, and my wife and I were there celebrating with one of my high school buddies and his wife our 50th birthdays, and we were in our balcony. We stared every day right at the Matterhorn, and so I feel like I got one more in me. So I think next year I'm going to go climb the Matterhorn. And check that off. It's such a beautiful mountain. And I was reading all the specs, like, okay, it would have been easy, 20 years ago. It'll tax me now, but it'll give me something to try and stay in shape in for the next 12 months and go try and get that mountain climbed.
Okay. When you climb it, you contact me, and I will have you back on for a mini celebration that you accomplished. That's really cool. I hope you're successful and safe and enjoy that. I'm sure the view from up there will be unbelievable.
Yeah, I hope so.
Hey, Scott, sorry.
Well, guys, thanks for tuning in. If you'd like to connect with our guest, we will put the links in the show notes down below. And of course, if you'd like to connect with Jason or I, hit us up on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, or shoot us an email. All the links are down below. Last, please remember that mastering your millions all starts with your mind and your team. Make sure they are the best. We will catch you next time.
Thanks for listening to Master Your Millions with Jason and Scott Henderson. Check the show notes for any links or contact information about today's guest. Make sure to follow the show so you don't miss any future episodes.